So I'm joined by Jacob Williams of Glass Revolver Games, and we're going to be talking about Eita. So Jacob, thank you for taking a little bit of time to talk with us today.
No problem. Happy to be here.
For anybody who hasn't seen a Eita yet, any of the glorious gifs you've been sending out into the internet, why don't you give them a pitch for the game? What is it? Why should they be excited? That kind of thing.
Like the 3 second pitch is that it's a bullet hell adventure with a strong focus on bosses and kind of NPC stories. The even shorter pitch would be it's like Titan Souls plus Enter the Gungeon with NPCs.
Fair enough. That gets right to the point. So I want to ask about that bullet hell mentality
Mhm.
because this is actually the first um, real like kind of bullet hell in this style that we've ever covered as an interview. So I wanted to ask, especially in the type of gameplay you're building where it's very boss battle centric, how you went about kind of designing this game and what kind of challenges popped up.
So originally the game wasn't a boss rush at all. The original idea for the game was Zelda 1 meets Nuclear Throne.
Mm-hmm.
So it was supposed to have this kind of sprawling world with lots of normal trash mobs throughout it, and then a couple boss battles here and there. But as I was working on it, I found that the boss battles were like way more fun and enjoyable than just fighting like a dozen trash mobs. Um, so as I was doing that, it was just kind of natural to want to just drop all the trash mobs and just focus on having just a large amount of bosses in the game. And like right now, it'll probably be a couple dozen or 2 dozens to be specific bosses, give or take a few when the game releases. So I mean, it was really just kind of iterating on the original design, and the game has really kind of been redesigned a few times uh, based on kind of just dropping stuff that was it just kind of bloated the game. And when
Mm.
I got down to it, it was just I wanted a big open world.
Kind of touching on the world that you're creating, I wanted to ask about the main character, Ita. Um, Kind of the tagline that's been thrown around in some of the pitches and press releases is a girl, her cat, and her gun. Um, and it kind of struck me as this really kind of funky, cool character. Where did that idea come from to have this protagonist as basically this little girl with a gun and a cat?
Yeah, so originally it wasn't really a girl. I was just trying to kind of find just kind of like a really simple, uh, easy to recognize character design,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of where like this like little kid in a bluish cloak kind of came from. And then I had a friend of mine who was kind of like looking at the gifs, and he was at some point he was just like, "Yeah, it's really cool that the character of your game's like a little girl," and I was like, I hadn't really thought about the gender, but and then from that point on, I made her a girl, and it kind of uh, I mean, the boss battles, the way characters interact with you, everything kind of evolved off of the idea, uh, based on the fact that she was a young girl. In the game, she's around 12 years old. Um, so, uh, so yeah, I mean, boss designs, kind of, um, yeah, I
The
mean, that's
last thing I
basically.
wanted to ask about the game specifically is how you've gone about creating atmosphere, because I think that's one of the things that for me has stuck out the most in kind of following Ida's development is this kind of really kind of gothic almost aesthetic you're going for of this ruined world, very very Dark Soulsy kind of in a way, the same kind of way that it feels you're wandering around this ruined world. Um, but
Mhm.
my thought has been it seems much more bright, and it combined with the minimalism of the pixel graphics you're going, it kind of creates its own aesthetic. So I wanted to know why you went that direction and how you built it.
Yeah, so I mean, starting at the aesthetic of the game, in regards to the pixel art, I'm a big fan, and it was kind of the game that kind of like sparked like um, oh, like games can look like this. If I was going to make a game, I would want to make it look like this, which was it was Sword and Sorcery,
Mm.
and it, that kind of modern minimalist pixel art style. And I mean, the other reason was I don't have any prior experience really in pixel art or anything before this game, so it was kind of like if I'm going to approach this game, I should probably kind of approach it from a style that depends more on kind of aesthetic and taste and kind of color choices rather than a sophisticated like pixel art skill.
Mm.
So that was kind of where that came from, and then the general kind of aesthetic or like ambience the game has. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of. Most of my favorite games are games that kind of drop you in these ruined worlds far after everything's happened. And I mean, that's a popular gaming trope. I think probably in part because it's easier than putting someone in the middle of the action that caused the ruined world. But I mean, even from a narrative standpoint, I'm much more when I'm playing a game, I'd much rather kind of run around a world and kind of discover what happened rather than be the catalyst of it happening. And with that, you kind of get layers of story, which I really like. So yeah, I'm a big fan of environmental storytelling, and I think kind of dropping a player in a world where everything is kind of already taken place is kind of the best setting for kind of dropping like little hints here and there and being vague and opaque. With that being said, I wanted to put NPCs in the game so that you could also get more of a grasp on the immediate story and kind of like the personal stories of these NPCs that are in more detail than the story of what happened, however long ago.
Perfect. So moving from talking about kind of ITTA and its development, I'd love to know kind of how you got into the world of independent game development. You mentioned you don't really have any kind of background in it, and this is your first commercial game. So I'm interested to find out what drew you in.
Yeah, I mean, if we go way, way back, I mean, when I was like a little kid, like 5, 6 years old, my two obsessions were video games and then film. And at that time, it's kind of video games are a lot more abstract. Like you don't really know how they're made or anything. And with film, it's pretty straightforward. You get a camera and you film stuff. So I kind of went down that route. Like even at like 12 years old, I kind of played around with like one of the first versions of Game Maker. And then as I kept going, I made film my thing. I ended up going to film school, went through that. And then in like my last year of film school, I re-downloaded Game Maker and started playing around with it. And I played around with it off and on for like 2-3 years. And then and film was kind of I was still trying to go towards that. And then some stuff happened, and I ended up kind of in like a bad place. Ended up in a psych ward, and it was in there where I was like, I kind of reevaluated everything in my life that made me happy and stuff, and I realized that not just video games but game development, even what little I had done up until that point, I just loved far more than any other kind of direction I could take my life. So from that point on, I got out and I started development on Eita, which I mean has a lot to do with a lot of the stuff I was going through. As far as I know, and I've been told by native speakers that Eita in Japanese means gone or went, and that kind of connects to a lot of the themes in the game, themes of displacement, depression, self-harm, and just a bunch of stuff like that. And so, I mean, that was really the kind of like the catalyst after a long time of kind of like flirting with it that got me to decide to like buckle down and really work for it.
That's an interesting story, and it's cool to hear that the game is kind of a reflection of that time in your life. So you said you played games as a kid. So what were some of the games that stick out to you in kind of looking back or thinking back that were kind of those linchpin games that were like, oh, I really would love to make something like this?
So I mean, way back. I mean, there's obviously like Pokemon, Metroid Fusion on the GBA was a big one. Even though I didn't get through very much of it, I don't think. There was oh man, there was some really like obscure Sega Genesis games that I played to death. Those were all kind of the games during that period. Was it where it was like, oh, I really love this. I would really like at that point I was drawing like comics and stuff, like every little kid does. But then I didn't really know where to go from there. And then later on, when I kind of realized like, oh, I think I can do this. I think I found the Game Maker website, and they would post a bunch of the like free games that people had made. So you'd play like, and they were generally like 5 minutes long, and
Sure.
And that's when I realized, oh, you can do this. It might not be any good, but you can do this. So and then later on is when I started noticing that like there were being commercial products being released, games like Nuclear Throne, Undertale, Hyper Light Drifter, all made in Game Maker, and I was like, oh, okay, well, like I'm not like a mathematically minded at all. Like I nearly flunked like most math courses in high school, and film school has no math courses. So I was like, well, this is probably the easiest way to go about this. So I decided to go from there. So I mean, it was those games. It was Sword and Sorcery, which was where it was like, oh, well, pixel art can be kind of something more than I've seen up until this point. And yeah, so that's kind of I think games like Nuclear Throne, Sword and Sorcery, and then kind of the ones way back. I mean, Ape Escape 2 was a big one, or maybe it was the original. I don't really remember. And then Zelda 1, obviously, which I think probably reflects the most in Eita.
Yeah, you can see that influence for sure. The last thing we always ask developers we talk to is what indie games on the horizon they're interested in or they're excited for. So if you want to maybe throw out a couple indie games that you're excited to see developed, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so I mean the one I'm looking forward to the most right now, and it's made by some awesome people, would be Luca, which I know you've had Colin on.
I have talked
before.
with Colin.
and that releases this month. I don't know the exact date, but I know it releases this month.
I believe it is August 21st, so coming right up.
There you go, yeah. And then the other indie game that it just recently came out by I think his name's Ben Porter, but Moon Quest. I've been playing quite a bit of that. Yeah, those two. Oh, and one more, because it didn't get the love that I think it deserved. It was a game called Pocket Kingdom.
Oh, cool.
It came out on Steam a while back, and it's made by the dude who got a lot of recognition earlier on for a game called what's it called? Stealer, but it was spelled with just a bunch of numbers. But it's called Pocket Kingdom. It's a great like little puzzle game with awesome art.
Cool. Those are 3 great suggestions for people to check out. Well, Jacob, thank you for taking a little bit of time to share both the design background of Eita and your background as an indie developer. Eita is currently scheduled for a 2019 release, but we'll have a link below to the Steam page if you are interested in seeing some more art or wishlisting it and keeping your eye on it.